Terraria, the game of adventure and wonders. Some people may think of it just as a 2D version of Minecraft, but it has way more than enough of its own charm. You must survive and adapt in a world full of monsters, demons, and cosmic abominations that would drive any person mad. Starting with the bare minimum, you have to mine the land, explore its steepest corners, and slay every threat in your path to build yourself as the strongest warrior possible to make it in the treacherous world of Terraria. This is such an expansive game, so let's waste no more time and see just what they have in store for Super Smash Bros. So getting right into things, the Terrarian would be a very below average mid-weight class character. They'd have 2 jumps and no additional movement options. Alright everyone, I hope you all are comfortable, cause while Terraria is very much its own kind of beast with its own merits, there's a reason why it's so heavily compared to Minecraft. So I hope you guys are ready to learn. Let me break down a few things. First off, the concepts that you'll be seeing will have a few similarities compared to that of Steve's moveset, both from Mine and what became of him in Smash. Both Mine and Sakurai's have similar theming, pulling into the idea of making yourself stronger with constant mining, with the major differences being that Mine built on the idea of building your moveset from what you mined, and Sakurai's built on crafting and resource management from what you mined, both of which are important themes to Minecraft as a whole. But with those concepts in mind, the game Terraria is built with the same kinds of themes, but different forms of progression. Whereas Minecraft is very much an open sandbox, Terraria is much more linear, with you only being able to progress after completing certain tasks that are laid out one after another in the world. So for this moveset, it will use the concept of starting out weak and becoming stronger by collecting resources. But unlike Steve's more open-ended playability, the Terrarian will be on a set path. It'll just be up to you to progress on that path by using the tools necessary for survival. I'll do my best to explain everything as coherently as possible, so if you don't understand something, please feel free to ask about it for better clarification. To best summarize, most of the Terrarian's attacks will allow them to gather resources in some fashion depending on the tool. Gathering enough of certain resources will allow them to upgrade those tools, and by meeting certain upgrade requirements, that allows the Terrarian to move up in tiers. Moving up in tiers gives you access to new upgrades, tools, and most importantly, the ability to collect new materials in order to move to the next tier, emulating how upgrading your equipment is what allows you to collect stronger materials. Though, even as you move through tiers, the Terrarian will for the most part always have the same type of kit, keeping the same general moveset and gameplay style at all times even as you gain new weapons. What really changes is your strength and ability to survive. There are a couple of exceptions. A few moves do change, though not that drastically, but I'll get to those later. With that said, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the Terrarian's basic attacks, because these are the primary moves that will be used for resource collection. In Minecraft, your predominant means of resource gathering was to mine it from the land. Some could be obtained from killing monsters, but for the most part, your most important equipment was gathered through mining. This is a different story in Terraria. Yes, important equipment is gathered from mining the land, but there's much more significance in collecting drops from monsters. Heck, you straight up can't progress during certain points unless you make tools from materials that can only be dropped from certain boss monsters. So for this moveset, certain attacks can be used on the stage itself to collect materials, but your most reliable means of gathering is by attacking your opponents and forcing them to drop the materials, of which you'll always automatically collect once it does drop from their person. As soon as the material appears, it's automatically yours. This will force you to be aggressive for the most part, which perfectly emulates Terraria anyway, because whereas Minecraft is a much more relaxed experience, kinda, letting you work at your own pace as safely as you want, Terraria is way more combat focused, again, forcing you to fight many boss monsters in order to progress. You can still hang back and collect the materials from the stage itself, but that process is a lot slower than just attacking the foes right in front of you and getting the item drops that way. And like I said before, the Terrarian always has access to many useful tools to help with the resource collection. As for what these basic attack tools are, you'll of course have the good old sword, which is your most reliable weapon for combat, but not so much for resource collection, as it's unable to collect from the stage itself. However, if you use it properly, you'll be able to get a lot of neat goodies from your opponents while also racking up their damage percents in the process. The other mainly offensive tool that you'll be using is a yo-yo. Like the sword, better for combat, especially from a distance, but it can't collect materials from the stage itself. So it will end up being the other two tools that'll be the biggest help with collecting materials: the pickaxe and the chopping axe. Attacks from these weapons are generally slower and have less damage output than the sword and the yo-yo, but to compensate, they collect more materials on average in fewer hits from opponents, and they also have the ability to collect materials if they connect with a part of the stage. Regardless of what you're using, every attack is guaranteed to collect materials if they land, with different tools collecting different amounts. The collection amounts never change for the sword or yo-yos though. Even when you start upgrading them, all of those attacks will only be able to collect one piece of material per hit. But your two axes by default can collect more than that, and as they get stronger, they will start collecting more and more with each upgrade. Now then, as for the attacks themselves, starting with the jab, this will be a one-hit semi-spammable jab where the Terrarian simply stabs their sword straight forwards, just like they do when using the short sword weapon. And just like with some jabs in Smash, you can hold the button down to have them rapid fire this attack. The dash attack will also be a simple sword stab attack, just one that comes out with momentum during their lunge. Both the side tilt and the up tilt will be the same exact attack. It can be the basic sword swing animation, the same normally used for broadswords as well as most swords in the game really. It's an overhead sword swing from front to back, with the sword ending on the ground in front of the Terrarian. Regardless of which you're using, since they are the same attack, you can hold the button down after initiating it to have them keep swinging the sword automatically, just like with the jab. Though this time, you can even walk forwards or backwards as you do so. The down tilt will be the first to use the yo-yo, having them roll it on the ground forwards to do the walk the dog trick. This is yet another move that you can keep out by holding the button down, and even walk forward and backward while you walk said dog. The yo-yo is also gravity affected, so you can let it hang off of ledges as a mean little edge guarding tool. But because of this, you can't hold it out forever. The yo-yo will automatically retract after a few seconds. It deals multi-hitting small flinching damage as it spins on the ground, and will deal small launching damage once you retract it. It will also only be that last launching hit that gets materials from hitting foes. Them being hit by the small flinching damage won't produce anything. Now the side smash and the up smash are going to be the first tools to utilize the mining equipment, with the side smash having them use the pickaxe. They do the exact same overhead swing animation that was used for the side and up tilts, though now the move is slower and deals more knockback that launches foes forwards. And because this smash attack always ends with it stabbing into the ground, it will always produce materials to mine. Just so long as it actually hits the stage, that is, so don't use it right next to a ledge. At default in the starting tier, you'll always get 2 pieces of material from hitting the stage, but if this hits a foe, you'll be guaranteed 3. Now, the side smash is one of the few basic attacks that will physically change after getting to a certain point in the tiers. In fact, it's only the pickaxe-based attacks that will. Eventually, if you collect the right materials, you'll be able to replace the pickaxe with a drill. The drill side smash is just stabbed straight forwards, dealing multi-hitting damage to foes that it hits before it launches them away. The drill can also be angled, which will let you be able to aim it into the stage if you so wish to collect materials with it. Using it on the stage can guarantee up to 6 pieces of material if you can get all of the hits to land, but getting all of the hits to land on a foe can get you up to 7 pieces. The up smash will be what utilizes the chopping axe, once again doing that same overhead swing, but now there's more power overhead to launch foes into upward angles. The chopping axe by default can only gain 2 pieces of material from both hitting the ground or a foe that's in front of you. However, hitting foes with it that are above you will reward you with 3 material instead, and if you're on a stage with platforms, you can use it underneath said platforms to collect materials from there, and this also rewards you with 3 pieces of material. And for their down smash, they use the yo-yo once again to perform a move that's near identical to Ness's down smash, only instead of rolling it from back to front like Ness's, the dog walks from front to back. It can also hang off the ledge like Ness's can, but this move can only hit foes once, so Terrarians launches foes on contact. For the aerials, their neutral air can be the same kind of overhead sword swing done for their side and up tilts, just now being used in the air. The forward air is the same kind of pickaxe swing as the side smash, though slightly weaker, and this also becomes the drill stab once you get that upgrade, which again works as a slightly weaker version of the smash attack. The only difference though is that landing the forward air pickaxe only gives 2 material no matter what, and the forward air drill gives 1 less material than the side smash drill. The back air can be another simple straight sword stab, only this time thrusting it behind themselves. But the cool thing about this move is that it actually does turn the Terrarian around in the air. The up air is once again the chopping axe, which works as a weaker but otherwise identical version to the up smash, and the down air is once again the yo-yo, dropping it straight below themselves. The properties of this down air work very much like the down tilt, with it dealing multi-hitting damage while spinning, then can launch foes once it retracts. You are also able to hold the button down to keep the yo-yo below you a bit longer. In fact, if the yo-yo touches the stage during this, it'll start to roll forwards a bit, and once the Terrarian lands soon after, the move just turns into the down tilt. Alright, I hope you guys have a basic understanding of the tools that you use to collect the materials. So with that explanation out of the way, I'm gonna go ahead and explain how the tiers work, as well as what materials that can be collected along the way. There are a total of 4 tiers within the Terrarian's moveset, with each tier representing a different part of the game that you can reach as you play. Each tier not only defaults you to a certain toolkit for your attacks, but it also determines what kind of materials that can be mined or collected. You always begin matches in Tier 1, which acts like you just loaded into a brand new world. When you do load into a new world, you always start off with a sword, a pickaxe, and a chopping axe, all made of copper, which will be what the respective tools are made out of here. Unlike Terraria though, this moveset will also start you off with the base form of the other tools as well, such as the yo-yo and a few others that I get to go over. The yo-yo in this case will be a wooden yo-yo. While in Tier 1, you'll only be able to obtain 6 types of material, 4 of which aren't needed for leveling up tiers, but are used for other things that I'll go over later. These 4 materials also cannot be dropped by players, only mined from the ground. They consist of stone, clay, sand, and marble. The last 2 materials, which can be both mined or dropped, so of course this means you're guaranteed to get them from enemy drops while in Tier 1, are Demonite and Crimtane. These are what you need to set your sights on, because once you collect enough of either, they'll be used to automatically upgrade your sword, and thus, upgrade your tier. It will be your sword that determines what tier you're currently placed in. Moving to the new tier will also upgrade your other tools, but not always. There are some that will need a bit more work, though in this case, moving from Tier 1 to Tier 2 will automatically upgrade your whole kit all at once. And quick disclaimer, I'm not going to bother going over how much of each material that you'll need to upgrade. That's something that'll need a lot more thought in order to assure that everything is properly balanced. Just know that having certain amounts of materials gets you to new tiers or upgrades, and the asking price for stronger tools would be increasing the higher you go. In which case, getting enough of either Demonite or Crimtane will move you into Tier 2, and upgrades your kit into the corresponding material set. Tier 2 represents the pre-hard mode point in the game, where you face off against the many early game bosses, such as the Eye of Cthulhu, the Eater of Worlds, and the Brain of Cthulhu. You also gain the ability to mine both Ebonstone and Crimstone from the stage. Normally, these 2 types of mineable material, as well as the bosses that can drop them, can't exist in the same world. It's either one or the other. But for the sake of this moveset, you'll have access to both for reasons that'll make much more sense coming up. If you get enough of the corruption's Demonite ore first, this upgrades your copper sword into the Light's Bane and grants you the Shadow set. This automatically gives you the Nightmare Pickaxe, the War Axe of the Night, the Malaise Yo-Yo, and on top of a few other tools that I'll save for later, you also get Shadow Armor. That's right, upgrading tiers not only gets you new tools, but it also grants you armor, which increases your survivability. Now if you get the Crimson's Crimtane ore, this instead upgrades the Copper Sword into the Blood Butcherer, which grants you the Crimson set, giving you the Deathbringer Axe, the Bloodlust Cluster, the Artery Yo-Yo, and the Crimson Armor. As for the differences between these two sets, while both do give a power boost overall, the Shadow set prioritizes speed and the Crimson set focuses on damage. Both strong in their own right, but once you get one, you're technically not able to use the other. The reason for this? Because the moment you get enough materials for both sets, the two swords will automatically fuse and immediately move you into tier 3. The Lightsbane and the Blood Butcherer combine to become the powerful Knight's Edge. This is another liberty that I'm taking here, since normally Knight's Edge can only be fused by combining either Lightsbane or Blood Butcherer with 3 other swords, since Terraria worlds can only have one or the other, not both. But since both swords in their respective worlds are used as the main component of the Knight's Edge, that's why I'm simplifying things and having it so that they just fuse together here. In which case, the Knight's Edge has the enhanced power and speed of both the prior blades, making it superior overall. And like I said, obtaining Knight's Edge is what moves you into tier 3. However, unlike moving from tier 1 to tier 2, moving to tier 3 does not automatically upgrade the rest of your kit. Some of the tools that I've yet to mention do, but everything else will be the same as before. What does change though is that you actually lose the ability to find Demonite and Crimtane, and instead gain the ability to find whole new material. Hallowed Bars, Pearlstone Blocks, Souls of Sight, Souls of Might, and Souls of Fright. Though, the Pearlstone can only be mined from the ground, and the Hallowed Bars and the Souls can only be dropped from opponents. As veteran Terraria players might guess, Tier 3 represents Hard Mode, the Hallow, and the mechanical bosses that come along with it. And it's only when you collect enough of the Hallowed Bars specifically when your kit will then level up. You gain access to a whole new sword called Excalibur, the Yellet's Yo-Yo, and the Hallowed Armor. Excalibur is a much stronger sword than Knight's Edge, however, it's also much slower. But when you do get it, you'll have the option to switch between the two blades at will by pressing the special button while you're shielding. Now, once you do have the Hallowed set, if you can collect even more Hallowed Bars along with at least one of each of the 3 souls, which are rarer may I add, that'll be what finally upgrades your pickaxe into the Drill, becoming the Drax. The chopping axe is also upgraded into a pickaxe axe at the same time. Now with the full Hallowed set, it's time to start working towards tier 4, and to get there, you're going to need to upgrade both the Knight's Edge and Excalibur. To do that, you'll need to collect one of each of the 3 souls again, but twice for each blade. When you do collect one of each, it prioritizes upgrading the sword that you're currently wielding. Then collecting the 3 souls again will automatically upgrade the other blade, even if it's not equipped at the moment. Upgrading Knight's Edge gets you the True Knight's Edge, which gains a huge buff to its power. And upgrading Excalibur will get you True Excalibur, which gains a huge buff to speed. And if you can get both, they fuse together to become this moveset's ultimate sword, the Terra Blade. A sword with the increased power and speed of the blades that became it, making it the best blade to have overall. I should mention though that in Terraria, the Terra Blade as well as the 2 swords that make it normally shoot these types of sword beams. That aspect could be a thing for this moveset, but it would have to be something that can only be done if you're at 0% damage, like with Link's sword beams. And even then, they'd have to be pretty nerfed compared to what they can do in Terraria. Now once you do get the Terra Blade, this is what unlocks tier 4, the final tier. This is the Lunar tier, representing Terraria's endgame. You lose the ability to get the souls or hollowed bars, but you gain the ability for new materials to be dropped from your opponents, and again, only from your opponents. This will be Luminite and the 4 lunar fragments. Just like with Tier 3, moving to Tier 4 isn't enough to upgrade the rest of your kit. You'll need to collect the Luminite before you can do that. Collecting enough Luminite, though, only gets you the Terrarian Yo-Yo, and a couple of other yet-to-be-mentioned tools. Once you do have the Terrarian, though, that's when you'll want to start trying to gather any of the lunar fragments. As I said, there are 4 of them, and collecting enough of any one along with more Luminite is what will upgrade the rest of your equipment into its final stages. Once you do get enough of one, you get a new drill, armor, and your pickaxe axe is replaced with a new ham axe, all turned into the set to match that fragment. Though once you do have one of the sets, you can still get the other 3, and once you get enough to unlock those sets, you will be able to switch between them whenever you want by using Shield Special once again. What's the benefit to doing this? Each set will affect the attributes of the Terrarian in their own way. As for what each of them can do, first there's the Solar set. This further increases the amount of melee damage that you can deal to opponents. Then there's the Vortex set. This increases the amount of range damage that you can do, which does involve damage from items, by the way. Next is the Nebula set, which adds magical properties to all of your weapons, slightly increasing their range and giving them a small little power boost, but it doesn't boost them nearly as much as the Solar and Vortex do individually. And finally, there's the Stardust set, which lowers the frame data of all of your attacks, making them slightly faster. It also adds a new feature to your smash attacks. Using them summons the Stardust Guardian, who does its own attack alongside yours, then vanishes once the attack finishes, giving much more power and disjoint to the smash attack specifically. And that's it! Once you get all 4 lunar sets, that'll be the most powerful that you can make the Terrarian. However, and this is a pretty big however, there is a downside here. I'm treating this moveset as if you're playing on a more forgiving version of medium core mode. When the Terrarian is KO'd, when they respawn, they come back in the tier prior to the one that they were just in. So if they were in tier 4, they go back to tier 3 to tier 2, and so on. You get the picture. That's also why I called it a more forgiving version, since in medium core mode, usually you lose everything when you die, not just some stuff. Though I suppose we could just pretend that they left their equipment from the prior tier back at their spawn point, and were forced to take that stuff since they just lost the stronger stuff. But worry not, it's actually a lot nicer than you might think. Reverting down a tier only costs you your sword. You technically still have the rest of your equipment, you just can't use them until you get back to the correct tier. So as soon as you retrieve your sword and move back into the tier that you lost, you'll automatically get back the rest of your lost equipment. You won't have to recollect everything. Alright, that's everything that you need to know about the resource collection mechanic. I understand that this is a lot, and for many of you, I'm sure it might have been a little hard to follow. But thanks to the linear nature of upgrading, as well as the simple base moveset that the Terrarian has, it shouldn't take too long for most players to quickly figure it all out. Cause remember, with the exception of the drill and a few of the special attacks that I'll go over here pretty soon, every single attack still does the same thing regardless of what weapon you have and what tier you're in. All that changes are their range, speed, and power. But alrighty, let's go ahead and get into the rest of this moveset, shall we? To grab opponents, the Terrarian will be using a grappling hook, making for a long-range tether grab that can be used for recovery, and even in the air as another attack. The grappling hook is another tool that changes throughout the tiers. For tiers 1 and 2, it is just a normal chained grappling hook, which has shorter range compared to most tethers out there. Once you unlock the Hallowed set in tier 3, however, this is replaced with the Illuminate hook, which has better range and is now about on par with most tethers in the game. But then in tier 4, in order to get the final best hook in the moveset, you have to collect all 4 of the lunar sets, making it the hardest tool to get in the moveset, the lunar hook. This gives Terrarian absurd tether reach, having a tether that might actually make Min Min blush, hence why it is the hardest tool to get out of all of them. But regardless of which hook you use to pull foes to you, Terrarian will pummel them by simply punching them in the face. For both the forward and the back throws, I gotta give thanks to my buddy Photon Bandit for this idea. In fact, I need to give him huge thanks in general, since he's the one that helped me round out this moveset and even filled in some things that I was having trouble with. His idea involves Terrarian sticking a sticky bomb to the foe, throws them normally, but then not long after being thrown, the bomb explodes, sending them even farther into the appropriate directions. The mid-air explosion is able to hurt other players who are too close to it as well. For the up throw, Terrarian places a geyser trap under the foe, which shoots flames straight up, sending them into the air. And for the down throw, this is a throw that can actually change depending on what materials you have, just like Steve's in Smash. When missing the proper materials, Terrarian just throws the foe into the ground, which deals very little damage while it bounces them away. If you manage to mine sand from the stage though, they'll drop a block of sand on top of the foe instead, which deals the same knockback as before, but much more damage. But if you have a ton of mined stone material, they'll opt to drop a boulder trap onto the foe instead, which deals a ton of damage, but still the same knockback. But as you'd expect, using the sand and boulder traps do use up the materials, with sand using up 1 thing of sand and boulders using up 5 things of stone. So you'll have to keep mining if you want to keep using these stronger down throws. For the Terrarian special attacks, these are the moves that change the most depending on your tier and resource collection. Starting with their neutral special, this will be block placement, just like what I made for Steve's side and up specials and what Sakurai made for his aerial neutral special. I suppose you can call this version a mix of both ideas, since it's mapped to neutral special like Sakurai's, but it's not limited to the air. It can also be used on the ground like how I made it. Using it on the ground has them place the block right in front of themselves, and using it in the air has them place it right under their feet. From there, it pretty much works just like how Sakurai brought it to life. The block stays there for a bit as a solid temporary platform that can't be passed through, will break after a short bit, but will break sooner if attacked. Also just like Sakurai's, the blocks that they place depend on what they mined, but they'll only ever use materials that came from the stage. They'll never use materials that can be dropped from attacking opponents. Stronger blocks, of course, last longer and can take more damage. They also prioritize placing the stronger blocks that they have, but doing so does consume it. This is where things start to deviate a bit, since Steve always prioritizes the weaker blocks. This is because Terrarian will always have access to dirt blocks. They can never run out of this. Because as I'm sure most Terraria players can attest to, you always, for some reason, have way too much dirt on you. It's the weakest block with the least priority, but it's at least something to use if you don't have any other materials for whatever reason. As for the different block strength from weakest to strongest, it goes from dirt to clay to stone, marble, ebonstone and crimstone, then pearlstone. Sand blocks will never be used for block placement. It can only be used for the down throw. But if you want to keep using that boulder trap, be careful not to waste too much stone. Next, for the Terrarian side special, this will have them use a wand to fire some magic. There are 4 different types of wands, each one being a part of a tier. All 4 of them fire a magic attack that goes straight forwards, but as you can guess, higher tiered wands are much more potent. Your starting tier 1 wand will always be the Wand of Sparking, which just shoots a weak spark projectile forwards that deals small flinching damage and pierces through foes. It has pitiful range and doesn't last for very long. The tier 2 wand, which you get as soon as you enter tier 2, can be the Vile Thorn. You get this wand regardless of which armor set you get. I know that doesn't make sense considering that the Vile Thorn is a corruption-only item, and there is a Crimson-based wand, but that creates a cloud that rains blood, so yeah, it's getting my share annoyed. Plus, the Vile Thorn is more consistent with the rest of the wands anyway, shooting a thorn-like spear projectile straight forwards that also pierces through foes and deals multi-hitting damage, but this one has more range, speed, and power. By tier 3, once you get yourself the Hallowed set, this gives you the Crystal Vile Shard, which does the same thing as the Vile Thorn, but it's longer, faster, stronger, and has much more range. And for the final wand, only available in tier 4 once you get enough Luminite, this gives you the powerful Last Prism. This shoots a piercing beam of light straight forwards that launches all foes on contact. It has the best range and power of all the wands. You can even hold the button down to keep it firing, but you can't move while you do that, and it does have a bit of cooldown after you let the button go. Now for the up special. These will be a bunch of tools that all give the Terrarian more airtime. They all allow you to move left or right a bit as you go up, and none of them put Terrarian into freefall. But they do have to touch the stage or get hit before any of them can be used again. By default in Tier 1, they always start with the Cloud in a Bottle, which only acts as a third jump that goes a little higher than their normal double jump. But as soon as you reach Tier 2, you'll be able to use Rocket Boots, which gives you the ability to fly for a very short time. In fact, the rest of the Ascension tools also do this, but they gain a bit more airtime with each tier. The Rocket Boots specifically get you very little airtime, only sending you into the air for about 1.5 seconds. You move pretty quickly though, so it should still be reliable enough for recovery for the most part. Once you get the Hallowed set in Tier 3, you will then get the Angel Wings, which now gives you 2 seconds worth of Ascension. And when you're in Tier 4, getting any of the Lunar sets will grant you the wings of that set. All 4 of them grant you a whole 3 seconds worth of airtime, but they all have their own properties to keep in mind. The Solar Wings have the best horizontal travel. The Vortex Booster nullifies all projectiles that make contact with you while in use. The Nebula Mantle releases magic that creates a wind box to push nearby foes away. And the Stardust Wings have the best vertical travel. And finally, for the Terrarian's down special, time to pay a visit to the Demolitions Expert, cause you'll be throwing some explosives. And just as a true excavation tool should, this is the only special that can cause materials to be dropped if it hits a foe. Also, only 2 of each explosive can be on screen at a time per Terrarian player. And as you'd probably expect from explosives, they are able to hurt the Terrarian as well if they aren't careful enough. In Tier 1, you use Grenades, the weakest of the bunch. It has the smallest burst radius, takes 3 seconds to explode, are gravity affected, only causes 2 material to drop from hit foes, and they can also be picked up as items and thrown around. In Tier 2, you get upgraded to the much more reliable Bombs. These also have a 3-second timer and are gravity affected, but they no longer can be picked up and have a much larger blast radius. And foes hit by said blast drop 4 material. Then after getting the Hallowed set in Tier 3, you get the much more devastating Dynamite. These have a 5-second time on them, but they cause a huge explosion with high KO potential. They are still gravity affected, and foes hit by these drop 6 pieces of material. And lastly, after getting enough Luminite in Tier 4, you'll just nix the bombs entirely and move straight to a high-powered rocket launcher. This has you fire a high-speed rocket projectile straight forwards that explodes after a set distance or after making contact with a very unlucky something. Though as a trade-off for having more control, the power of the rocket launcher is smaller, about the size of the grenade explosion, and its strength is averaged between the bomb and the dynamite. Though, foes hit by the explosion of this rocket will drop 8 pieces of material. Now there is actually one more little detail with these explosives, and it actually pertains back to the forward and back throws. You might recall that those throws has Terrarians stick their foe with a sticky explosive. Well, what type of sticky explosive they use depends currently on what explosive you have for your down special. Starting with sticky grenades, to sticky bombs, then sticky dynamite. That's where it stops though. To my sadness, there's no sticky rockets. Regardless, the damage and launch power of the 3 slime-covered explosives increase with each higher tier, with sticky dynamite even being able to get some early KOs on players with high enough damage percents. For the Terrarians' final smash! They summon onto their foes the very demons that fester in the world of Terraria, using the boss summoning items to unleash these monsters for a cinematic final smash. Terrarian holds the item over their head, causing a burst of energy to release from it, and all foes hit by that energy will be pulled in. Now, the cinematic that plays and the demon that appears is entirely dependent on your tier and current equipment. It's for the most part the same kind of final smash across the board, but higher tier demons deal more damage. It always plays out with the demon attacking the foes to rack up their damage, then finishes with the Terrarian slaying the demon at the end of the cinematic, after which the foes are launched away into directions opposite of their position from the Terrarian. The cool thing here though is that when the Terrarian slays the beast, they actually drop a ton of material, which can be used as a quick shortcut to move ahead in the tiers. So as for what these demons are, Tier 1 always has you use the Suspicious Eye to summon the mighty Eye of Cthulhu, which is most people's first boss fight in the game. After it does its thing, the Eye of Cthulhu can either drop Demonite Ore or Crimtane Ore, never both. But it generally will give you the material that you already have the most of, which should push you just far enough to reach Tier 2. Once you are in Tier 2, they'll summon one of 2 demons depending on your armor set. They do the same damage, but what they drop is entirely different. If you have the Shadow Armor, you'll use the Bloody Spine, which would just be a dried not Bloody Spine for Smash, to summon the Brain of Cthulhu, which drops Crimtane Ore. And if you're in the Crimson Armor, you'll use the Worm Food to summon the Eater of Worlds, which drops Demonite Ore. I know it doesn't make much sense for Shadow Armor to summon the Brain and for Crimson Armor to summon the Eater, but in this case, I'm prioritizing what makes the most sense for resource collection. After all, if you already have Shadow Armor, then you don't need more Demonite, and vice versa with the Crimtane. These final smashes are designed to help you get more of the materials that you're still missing. So it's either I have it set up like this, or have it so that the Eater of Worlds drops Crimtane and the Brain of Chipotle drops Demonite, and doing that makes even less sense. Regardless, it's designed to help getting to Tier 3 a little easier, and once you are in Tier 3, you'll then be able to summon one of the 3 deadly mechanical bosses. The Twins, summoned by the Mechanical Eye, the Destroyer, called with the Mechanical Worm, and Skeletron Prime, brought on by the Mechanical Skull. Again, all 3 deal the same damage but are still powered up from before, and they drop different materials after being slain. These 3 mechanical demons all drop hollowed bars, but each one also drops their own respective souls. The Twins drop the Soul of Sight, the Destroyer drops the Soul of Might, and Skeletron Prime drops the Soul of Fright. Which boss you get is random, but it will generally prioritize giving you the mechs that drop souls that you don't already have. And finally, once you're in Tier 4, you'll use the Celestial Sigil to summon the most powerful demon, the Moon Lord. Not only does this monster deal the most damage to foes, but it's also the only one capable of KOing players automatically if their damage goes over 150%. It also gives the Terrarian Luminite afterwards. So just like with Steve, the Terrarian was another one that gave me some issues when it came to their alternate colors. And not because there's nothing to work with, but because there's too much. Players are able to fully customize their Terrarian character with all kinds of outfits, hairstyles, gender, and an entire spectrum of colors for everything on their body. However, due to the fact that you do get armor in this moveset, most outfits and hairstyles would be covered anyways, so I'm not going to bother worrying about that. Instead, it'll be the color variety that's most important. To keep things simple, we'll just have 4 male alts and 4 female alts that'll each have a diversity of colors to separate them, and these colors will be translated to their armor sets as well to help tell them apart. Starting with the default alt being the actual default look that you always see first for the character when you boot up the character customization. Then we have a female with red colors, then male with purple, then female with green, then male with orange, then female with yellow, then male with black, and finally a female with white. For the stage intro, the Terrarian can warp to the stage using a magic mirror, the same used whenever they want to return to their spawn point. So we can just pretend that wherever it is they start on the stage could be their initial spawn point, which then changes after they respawn from being KO'd. For the Terrarian's first taunt, I am stealing this one from my old Steve moveset, but hey, since it wasn't used in Sakurai's version of the moveset, I say it's fair game to use it again here. It could have the Terrarian place a torch on the ground to light up the area. After all, just like in Minecraft, keeping the area lit up is important for not getting overrun by monsters. You can place a few torches on the stage, but they always disappear after a few seconds. The second taunt could involve the pets. Pets are cosmetic equipment that you can put on to have a little companion follow you around. So for this taunt, it can show a random pet appear and float around the Terrarian, then disappear. And the last taunt can have Terrarian pull out and swing the Pwn Hammer. They swing it just like they do for most of their other weapons, and it can actually hurt foes, but it's very weak and it makes a funny sound if it hits them. So you use this more for disrespect than anything else, or I guess to use the proper internet terms, to pwn them. But finally, for the Terrarian's victory animations, their first just shows an empty Terraria house, then suddenly Terrarian appears out of nowhere next to their bed, warping there with the magic mirror, referencing the idea that they'd finished their current expedition and chose to safely warp home. Their second victory animation can show Terrarian riding on a mount, but what mount is dependent on what tier they were in when they won the match. Tier 1 has them ride a slime mount, Tier 2, a bee, Tier 3, a unicorn, and Tier 4, the drill containment unit. And for the final victory animation, it'll be a true celebration. You see a ton of the NPC characters all standing around wearing party hats with balloons floating around in the background. The camera pans to the party girl handing your Terrarian the celebration gun, which they then fire into the air to set off some fireworks. You won the match, so now it's time to party! And that does it for What If the Terrarian was in Smash! Again, I want to give a huge thank you to my buddy Devin. He was a big reason why this moveset was able to come together as well as I feel it did. So thanks again, man. In which case, if you enjoyed what you saw and would like to see even more characters be given possible Smash movesets, be sure to subscribe. And if you want to support the show and help me be able to make more content for you guys, you can click the join button either below the video or my main page to become a sponsor for my channel. Doing so gets you access to my private Discord as well as channel emotes. You can guarantee that your name appears in my videos, or even get the option of knowing what if character is coming up next a whole week in advance. I really appreciate anything that can be contributed. And of course, if you have a character that you want to see be given a possible Smash moveset, leave a comment down below or contact me on Twitter at BrawlFan1 on Twit. I hope you all enjoyed, and thank you so much for watching!